Hi, this is Dr. Kimberley Linert, and you're listening to Incredible Life Creator Podcast. My guest today is Dr. Gary Salyer. Dr. Gary Salyer is a transformational relationship mentor. For the last decade, Dr. Salyer has been in private practice offering singles and couples heart-centered transformation so they can rewrite the rules for love in their brains and create love that lasts. Dr. Gary speaks to a national audience as a featured expert on various celebrity TV and radio shows, such as Hay House Radio and Coast to Coast AM. He is the author of the groundbreaking book, Safe to Love Again, How to Release the Pain of Past Relationships and Create the Love You Deserve. For more information, go to www.garysalyer.com. Welcome to the podcast, Dr. Gary.
Thank you, Kimberly. I am so happy to be here.
Yes, I am so excited to hear what you have to say about relationships too, because with everything going on that's going on, our relationships are seeming to change, or maybe things are coming to the surface that we didn't know, was there. So
yes,
I'm excited to talk to you about that.
Yes, there's quite a few challenges coming down COVID lane.
Yes. So just so people get to know you, start out by telling us where you grew up, how you started out, kind of your journey of how you got to where you are today.
Okay. Well, I grew up in Ohio, the Midwest, right? Went to school back there and then came out to the West Coast 30-some years ago. So it's been pretty cool. When I started out, I grew up in a family that it was interesting. There was a lot of alcoholism. And in my book, I talk about, I had a mother that would have been diagnosed today with borderline personality disorder. And even as a child, I began to, at one party, I began to notice how mean my uncles were when they got drunk. And I kept thinking, why can't adults love each other? So when I went to college, I had this thing where I was not going to become one of those people that was divorced, right? And you got to realize that in my family, there were 7 generations of people that never graduated from high school. So I was in the middle of breaking that mold, right? And my senior year, so I had these 2 degrees. I did one in psychology, and I got a major in religion. And I'm doing this with one intent purpose. I will not repeat a pattern of divorce in my family. In my senior year, I think, man, I've got this thing locked down. And my favorite psychology professor says, I got this new test. Come on in, we're going to take it and I'll score it myself. So I take it and he calls me a few days later and says, oh, these are the results. I guess you do have a personality, And as I'm walking out the door, Kimberly says, oh, I forgot to tell you, by the way, you have a 90% chance of having a divorce. Oh. And grenades were going off in my head. What do you mean 90% after this much? So I literally delayed graduation to go back to school to get a 3rd degree in marriage and family. If 2's not good, 3 will be. Oh, and then the unthinkable happens. 13 years later, my college sweetheart says, I want a divorce. And I didn't get it. I mean, I did everything. So I hunkered down and I said, okay, we'll do therapy. I did like 7.5 years of therapy, pronounced myself good to go. And lo and behold, 4 years after the second, I'm looking at another divorce. And it was somewhere after that when I noticed that all those degrees, all that therapy, all those workshops, none of them had changed my core style of relating, picking, and creating. And I thought, nobody should work this hard and get this little result. And at that point, I'd been a graduate professor, and I said, I'm going to walk away from what I'm doing because this is important. And I decided that if they couldn't crack the code, I will. And it was at the same time that one of my graduate students wrote me, she was in her late 20s, worked in marketing at Charles Schwab. And I I knew there was something that was so distressful and I wasn't happy with about my life. And I couldn't figure out. I had the PhD. I was doing everything I should be loving, right? And this email comes in. Dear Dr. Salyer, what's a brilliant man like you working only with 10 to 12 students at a time? If you ever want to play a bigger game of life, give me a ring. And with all the rest going around, I go, this is it. This is not a big enough game. This is not changing the world. This is not another book with 993 footnotes will not create any more meaning in the world. Mm. And it was a soul level wake up call. Yeah. So that, if you want to, that's, and then I devoted myself to cracking the code, and that's how we got to the book Safe to Love again, attachment theory. And it became my soul's passion. Mm-hmm. Once I got very clear on what it was and what it wasn't.
Wow. So how do you even start a quest like that?
I don't know that you start it. When I look at this, it's an interesting question. The way I frame it is, and now people, if you're out there listening, you can agree or not agree, because, I believe our souls, however you define it, it can be your best higher self on your best day, or it can be some sort of metaphysical, if you want to. If you come from India or any other place like that, you can say it was, there's lots of incarnations. But I believe my soul came to learn a set of lessons, to do a certain set of things. And I don't think I chose it. I think I chose it. I think some part of me chose this path with all of the contrasts, all of the things that threw me out of balance, so I could find out what, you have to be out of balance to know what balance is. Yeah. And so you have to understand what hate is to really understand what love is. So all this contrast was just enough to give me my soul's lessons. That's it.
That's it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So if the traditional college research wasn't helping you break the code.
Oh no. In fact, it's once I found out the answers, I almost laughed at why I did all that. When you're growing up with a borderline mother, one of the things I realized is I didn't want to feel my feelings, because those things get trampled on pretty fast by anybody who's a borderline, right? Mm-hmm. So it was far easier to be in my head, to be intellectual, to keep my heart away from hers. Now, what I say is, every deal we make, everything that looks dysfunctional is at one point in time the best deal available at some time. So at that point in time, my brain makes a really, really good deal. Stay away from the right side of your brain and your feelings, get into your left side, make sure you're really in your head, because that way that's the best deal available. Yeah. So knowing that, I call it a missing right to exist, and I'm trying to prove my existence either intellectually or spiritually. So so I was doing both psychology and religion. I was trying to prove myself, but but when I'm in my head, it doesn't work so well for my first wife, who complained of feeling lonely, right? And being in my head, what does that look like? I can still remember she was telling me she was unhappy, that I didn't understand her at all, and I needed to try to understand her. So I went out like any good intellectual, and I got more books on how to understand women.
And how did that work for you?
Well, you're gonna love this story, Kimberly. So I've read, I'm reading this thing like any good PhD student, and then she would say stuff, and I'm going, that's interesting, because the book says that women like this. And I said, wow, I did, because the book said this about women. And at one point she goes, Gary, don't read the book, read me.
Smart woman.
Oh, whoa. He said, that wasn't in the book. Now all that stuff of getting more degrees, it was an example. It was noble, but it was also exactly the solution you would look for if that's how you've been wired to look at life. It's like the whole thing that, Einstein said that in order to solve a problem, you have to work at the level above that. And this, it's below that. It's the feeling of, I got to validate myself. I don't have a right to be here. So let's get spiritual. Let's get, educational. And what creates lasting love is I can feel into you. I don't, oh, you must be feeling that. Gosh, honey, come over here. That sounds horrible. It sounds like you need a hug. And that was the one thing that wasn't safe at all as a child. And it was recovering that place of safety with all of me that opened the doors so that I understood what love and lasting really was. But, there's a journey there, so to speak.
Exactly. So what was the difference in the way you felt or interacted or reacted when you started to actually get into your heart as opposed to being in your head?
It was a shock to find out what I had been missing. When I remember it was, doing some real deep training on this stuff, as part of what I do now. And at first it scared me to death. I thought, man, this is not what I do well, and I was really afraid of it at first. And so I get it when a lot of men are afraid of their feeling. We get the double whammy of, you're not a full man if you're in your feeling, and then you get whatever else, But when I really began listening into feelings, it was like a blind man getting his sight back. It was like, wow, I've been missing all these clues. And what I tell my men clients is something I learned. I go, they look, women will look like a mystery to you as long as you're analyzing them. If you can feel with them, they are no big mystery. Really, they've got their roadmap to make them happy, and it's called their feelings. And if you try to fix them, God help you. It really is. I mean, it was like recovering me. I had a right to all these feelings, right? And a lot of men, we are trained that we can't have these feelings or whatever, or it's logical not to, and it's not. I had a person that attended one of my workshops once. He was retired physics, and he worked at the lab that creates better and better nuclear bombs. He was a top flight physicist. So he was pretty into his left brain, right? And of course, there I am doing a workshop with a lot of feelings. I talk about these 4 core feelings love depends on: welcomed, worthy, and cherished, and empowered. And at some point in the first day, he raises his hand and says, I don't buy this thing about feelings. We don't need more feelings. We just need more logic. More logic will solve all these problems. And I hear the women on the go, oh, I go, give me a second. And I said, so you believe that more and more feelings, less and less feelings and more intellect, more logic? Is absolutely. I said, what's interesting is, it's really interesting because the left brain that gives us logic is good at dissection and looking at all the information and seeing sequences and all that other good stuff. Okay, it gives you data point, data point, data point. I said, now the right brain that does feelings, it's the one that sees the whole picture. I said, so if you're into physics and all you have is a whole bunch of data points and no overarching big picture called theory, do you have physics? I said, you've been using your right brain all along. I said, and it's interesting that Einstein's right parietal lobe that does time in the brain, and space was 50% larger. I said, so what you're proposing is that it's logical to go through life as a man with only using half your brain. Does that sound logical?
Oh my gosh.
And he goes, there's a logic to that. I go, good.
At least you got some acknowledgement there.
And he signed up. He signed up to work. He says, let's give it a try. you know, but I think a lot of men are stuck like that. And if you're out there, and there's reasons. I mean, it wasn't safe in my family background, and as I've been getting that message as a man, as athletic as young, you don't have your feelings, So, but I think the next phase of consciousness is men can still be men and have all their feelings. I have to tell some husbands, you'd fight any beast that went after your, wife, right? Oh yes, I'd protect her. You'd climb any mountain. I said, your feelings are not a fire-breathing dragon. They're just feelings. But, so it's just getting safer, is helping your brain find out what good reason it took. When it created some pattern that isn't working, that part is working so hard for you. That pattern was there to create safety, but it's like an old security memo that was never given an expiration date. And it's getting enough, doing enough of the deep work that you can let those old patterns, honor them, and invite your brain to take a better solution. That gives you what you want.
Yeah, and that makes sense, because I know I have patterns that I had in childhood that, wouldn't allow me to do what I'm doing today with you, because I was very shy and quiet, and that worked really well in my household.
Yeah.
As an adult, it doesn't work so well.
No. And when people are shy or quiet, sometimes I think there's temperament things. But I've had several people over the years that didn't come for doing love and relationship. A business coach who had worked on said, hey, they need to get on stage. And what I found is, for the ones that I've worked with, there was always some time where being seen was not safe. For two of them I can think of, if they were seen by a mom or dad and then they got beat on. So some part says being seen was getting beat. Now that part is timeless and is still running like a 4-year-old. So when you get up in front of an audience of 80, it doesn't see 80 audience members, it sees 80 muggers. No wonder they need Xanax. And if we can get that cleared up, then they can that's the way it is with everyone. Mm-hmm. So if you're out there and you're thinking, gosh, I have some pattern that isn't working, you're not so much stuck as some part is working really hard to keep you safe. It took the best deal. And the way I talk about these things, I call rights in the book. Certain rights, like I talked about a right to exist earlier. It just takes that and puts it in a layaway. What's the point of a layaway? So that at a later time, when you're in back when you're a kid, when you have the money, you could go and get it out of the back of the store and it would be there. So every time we say we can't do this or I'm stuck here, it's some part that wisely took an experience that wasn't safe at an earlier time, put it in a layaway, and it's still there inside of you, just waiting for the day that someone says, hey, it's safe to go and bring it out.
Mm-hmm. I love that example. That's really encouraging.
It's supposed to be. And it's the truth. The resources are always within us. They're always within us. There's always that side. And that's why I called them rights in the book. Rights are, there you call them permission slips, but our brain early on gets certain permissions for certain experience. I call them rights. You have a right to be here and feel really good about being in your body, to be on this planet. The world can be your cozy oyster. That's a feeling of welcomed with joy and a right to exist. Now, if you're given a feeling that you as a little one, you can reach out to have your needs met, right? I want the binky. No, I don't want the bottle. I know I don't want chance. I want the binky. And eventually they give you an attuned response. Oh, yes. Then you learn, oh, it's good. I'm worthy enough to reach out to have my needs met. Mm-hmm. If they are, and then later on when we get to walk, the little one realizes, oh, I'm a me. I thought we were all the same, and but I know I'm a little vulnerable, so I need a we. So, kids, they will separate and they want to play by their toys, but if you leave the room, all sorts of stuff breaks out, like tears and crying. Right? They want you in the room. They want to know that someone is looking over them, that they're seen, that they are cherished and protected. They get to be a me in a we, not one or the other, not all enmeshed we, not all, or the Marlboro person out on there just being a me. And then later on, if it's okay to have a voice, if it's okay to create your own experience, no, if a little girl says, I want to play with the truck, that's fine, honey, you can play with the truck, right? Then we get a feeling of empowered with choice. We get a right to create our own experience and not just someone else's. And we get a right to assert, which is both a voice, and we get to have our wins in life. We get to choose what we want. And then when about age 3, the brain adds these permission slips out and says, am I loved or not? And it creates a right to love and be right loved back. Sometimes that gets split. I get more right to love than to be loved. But from these 4 feelings we're given as a child, feelings give us these permission slips, these rights. If I feel welcomed, worthy, cherished, and empowered, I get all those rights. And then I get the patterns that make love work. But if it wasn't for anything, the brain pulls it out, and there are dysfunctional patterns that go with every last one of them. Until we restore the feeling. We can teach somebody that won't speak up to their partner. We can give them communication skills, but if they don't feel empowered, they're never going to do that.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. So feelings is the logical first step.
So, how do we create a relationship where there's safety and each person has those rights and they feel safe to actually express themselves however they show up, their authentic self?
Okay. So these 4 feelings I talk about, you get from 0 to 3. They're your brain's natural GPS for love. And these feelings, the brain uses for everything. It will use these same feelings in business and love, health, everything. Okay. So if you think about it, if you're out there and you're listening to this podcast, 1 to 10, think about your current relationships. If you're in a relationship, or your last one if you're single. 1 to 10, how welcomed with joy did you feel? That welcome with joy is, good morning, gorgeous. Oh, it looks like you needed a hug. Come over here, honey. You're just getting back from work, right? Mm-hmm. That's welcome with joy. Worthy and nourished, 1 to 10. How worthy and nourished that it was okay to reach out, and you knew they were going to. You say, honey, I don't want to do sushi tonight. Then 2 hours later, he says, oh, I thought we'd do sushi. That's not worthy, right? But if he says, hey, I got this there's a brand new sushi, not sushi, but a brand new, cuisine over here how about that? I mean, oh yeah, you know how much I love new things. That's worthy. Then cherished and protected. You get a partnership. You get to be a me, go out and explore your life and come back to the home port of somebody else's heart, where they get to be the safety net under the high wire act of all your love and aspirations. So there's backup to your dreams, and they're supporting your dreams. They get your dreams, they inquire about your dreams, and they are a support for your dreams as you are there. That's cherished and protected. And empowered with choice is they share influence with you. They actively want to hear and give you a voice. They create win-win for everybody. So 1 to 10, how welcome did you feel? 1 to 10. How worthy? 1 to 10, how cherished and protected. You get to be in a we. And 1 to 10, how empowered you feel. Anything less than a 7 or an 8, I guarantee you there's a missing right underneath that feeling in that relationship. Because some part of you, we will only choose a relationship that gives us the feelings we have the rights for. If people were given unworthy, they will choose a taker or someone who's bad at creating what's called love maps and details. If someone feels disempowered, they will either lose themselves in a relationship and resent the other person for it, or they'll find a dominator and then resent them for it. We are always having the experience we have the rights for. The feelings are like a compass. So So it's true. If we were given unwelcomed or unworthy or disempowered or uncherished, we will use those. So the key is to swap them out. So we feel in our core being, right in our body, we have a right to feel welcome, a right to feel worthy, a right to feel cherished, and a right to feel empowered. And people who have that feeling, they give no BS, they take no BS. And that's the key, is if you want a lasting relationship, ask yourself every week, I do myself, how well did I do, given my beloved, welcomed and worthy and cherished and empowered?
Mm.
You know, uh, you know, say you're, not that I would have ever done this, they're planning on coming over and you get stuck doing work and the doorbell isn't ringing, they're knocking on the door for 10 minutes. Just imagine that could have possibly happened. You know, and you open the door and you give her a hug, but you can kind of see this, that there's that look on her face as a man, I've seen it at least once or twice in my life. You know, right? And I said, I bet that didn't feel very welcome when Joy did it, honey. And she goes, no, it did not. You know, I knew, I looked at that and I go, it was an honest mistake, right? But I acknowledged the feeling before she even got it out.
Uh-huh.
You know, and said, no, you're right. You're right. This moment was a lousy job communicating. You know, and if you are doing those sorts of things as a couple,
Mm-hmm.
not, well, did I take out the trash like she asked me to? No, it's not the trash. It's the fact that she's asked and you haven't tracked it enough. Mm-hmm. That she doesn't feel welcomed or empowered, worthy or empowered, If you can find out, and there's skills for all this. There are skill sets. Mm-hmm. There's ways of dealing with this, of giving this, I talk about those in the book, but the primary thing is give the feelings, and check in with your partner. And if not, then you ask, so what would make you feel cherished, right? What would make you feel empowered? If couples do this, they're well on their way to lasting. And within the one thing I think is that they have to have a we. There has to be a we for a couple. Show me a couple without a we, and I'll show you a war. So you have to have that we. And with all couples, whatever the pattern is that's painful between you, mm-hmm. if the two of you can become a team, the key move when I work with couples is to get them to realize that this painful pattern, both of them came by naturally. Uh-huh. And if they can become partners, if they can make the pattern wrong and not the partner, let me repeat that. If you can make the pattern wrong and not the partner, and you become teammates against the pattern rather than each other, that's when a couple begins to turn the corner.
Okay.
Yeah.
So let's say you want to go out and you want to create a we relationship with someone. What do you look for in a relationship partner?
Okay.
To make it so it will be successful.
I tell all single men and women, you're looking for signs of the we. And they usually show up first. And they show up early. And maybe not the first date or two, and yet, So signs of the we are things like, are they going to share influence with you? Do they co-create with you? And there are some simple things. We know that people who are more on their own map, they use the word I more than we or us. And just notice if someone says, well, what are we going to do on a date this Saturday? Well, I was thinking that we could go. I was thinking, right? And so, well, what would we like to do? I'm not sure. What do you think, honey? Right? Because I'd like to do something we would enjoy. Start noticing the nouns and pronouns never lie. Notice if they tend to do things, if they're stuck on their map, so to speak. Everything has to be seen on their terms versus they can understand it on your terms. What does that look like? Somebody, you say, one of the best moments, honey, was when I was running in the Boston Marathon, and even though I finished, 999,000th at the back, and I finished it, and it was so great. Oh, Boston, I've been there. They have some of the greatest clam chowder. I like Boston too. And all of us have met people. Notice if they can get off their map. If they can hear you on your terms and not without constant reference to themselves. Mm-hmm. Sharing influence, how much they want to do things as a we, partnership, things like that. Mm-hmm. And do they have your back? If you see that and you're getting these 4 feelings from them, and I tell both singles and men and women that these long lists that like you're prone to create because internet apps and dating sites do like this, it creates a list, and the list is irrelevant almost. A short list is fine, right? But what tells you is these 4 feelings. But a lot of people, they approach dating with a list longer than a receipt from CVS, and
crazy.
And there's research to show it doesn't. People who, when their compatibility, and when a relationship breaks up, they go, well, we were just incompatible. No, it was the quality of them, what they're called the marital friendship, or the partner, these feelings. So look for the feelings. As one, I had a woman that started out as a client with me, and the first session she goes, I think I found Mr. Jackpot. I'm always interested when Mr. Jackpot shows up the first session, right? Before we've reset these rights, so she has rights for an even better person, right? Because we want to upgrade those before she chooses, right? And sure enough, it was the old mold. And I go, tell me about Mr. Jackpot. Oh, he's 6'2". And he's handsome. Oh my God, he's handsome. And he's a doctor. He is a doctor. Can you believe that? And not only that, but he's read Gary Chapman, and he does yoga and Pilates. I've hit the jackpot. Okay, cool. Now, her missing in her childhood, she never felt very worthy and never very cherished. So she's got a right for unworthy and uncherished at this point. She's picked this guy. 5 weeks into it, she comes into the office, sits down. She goes, yeah. She starts talking about Mr. Jackpot. She says, yeah, he likes Pilates. He just likes it to check out other women. I says, so not very cherished and protected. No, not at all. See, Flash forward a few months later, when she's now got feelings of welcomed, worthy, cherished, and empowered, informing her who to pick. She's got another Mr. Jackpot, almost the same description, except he's an attorney, right? And then the guy shows up. He's decent looking, he's good looking, but he's a few pounds overweight, and he comes in, instead of wearing a very expensive, Armani suit. He's in a not a polo, he's in a Hawaiian shirt, right? And they go out, and she tells me a few weeks later, she goes, I chose the guy with the Hawaiian shirt. And I said, why? She goes, and her words were, he makes me feel like a queen. Queen would be her word for cherished and empowered and worthy. Mm. Bingo. Not Mr. Lottery, but Mr. Four Feelings. So it's, and this is like a new theory of attachment. This is, you don't have, if you've ever heard of attachment theory, it's all the science of how your brain is wired to love and create relationships. And this is it. Create them with these 4 feelings, and you've got a winner.
Mm-hmm. So if people have been in a relationship for a long time, but they kind of feel like it's either flatlined, or they're living in the same house, let's say the kids are gone and they're living in the same house, and they're just, it's not that they're fighting, but they're not really interacting or loving. You know,
Yes.
she's playing golf and she's going with her friends and they're just existing. Let's say they wanted to reunite that and actually have a living, breathing relationship. What would you tell them?
Yeah, sometimes that feels very safe to people, especially, some people are conflict avoidant, right? Uh, but when there's huge amounts of fights in a couple, they tend to flame out about at 6.8 years. When people are conflict avoidant and it's like this stalemate of what is it, passivity, whatever it is, right? And they tend to chill out at about, and they die on the frozen tundra at about 18.6 years, right? But if these, in a lot of times, they have chosen it because this lackluster relationship, because they didn't have rights to something better. It fit an old pattern. And they tried initially to have a little more, but their pattern stopped it. So they have enough love to keep it going, but not enough love to really be paired, and they don't know how to, right? Or some part of them was just really more comfortable with distance and didn't understand. They didn't have any templates for real closeness. The first thing those couples have to realize is that it's not as safe as it looks, and they have rights for far more. You have to have two people that really would like to have more. And a lot of times, kids, work, all those distractions came on board and kept them from seeing the missing pieces because they were too busy. Did you take the kid to the soccer game? Did you get Susie to the dentist? Do you know what the average couple spends doing face-to-face time per week with each other, not dealing with chores is?
Not very.
17 minutes.
Oh, wow. That's really not a lot.
That's, nobody goes out on a 17-minute date, not unless something really weird happened. These couples are dying for intimacy, and they don't know it. They have to make a priority that the couple is above all that. I think, there's research to point that, children, sometimes it can be career, sometimes it can be elder care, can do this, but the primary has to be each other. They have to make each other number one, and that relationship. Kids are second. And let me repeat that for the women on it. Kids are second. Nobody wants to be number 2, 3, or 4, because if there's multiple kids, and so you have to be able to look at those patterns and notice that you deserve far more, and you commit to it. There has to be a real we with real shared. These couples, they have to make a commitment to each other, and then they have to rediscover each other. And if you don't, people inevitably grow apart. Nobody stays the same. I can still remember, Kimberly, something that I saw when I was 20, when I was in my degree for marriage and family. And the professor brought 3 couples in to interview them, so we could see what real couples. There was a young couple, newlyweds, and they had just graduated last year. And when I found out he had married her, I was never thinking, oh, I don't believe that. It was one of those couples, right? And then there was this old couple that were in their late 40s, because you're 21, right? And there was a couple that he was 93, she was 88, and they'd been married for 63 years. And at one point in time, we had this very disrespectful football player who said, so I want to ask the guy's name, what's it like being married to the same woman for 63 years, right? And this guy picks up his attitude. And he says, well, son, if you're fortunate enough to be married to the same woman for 63 years, he says, you've got another thing coming. He says, if you think you're married to the same woman for 63 years, let me tell you something. she is going to be different women at different times. She goes, and then he goes on, he says, I was married to 5 different women. Every 10 to 12 years, she would change.
Mhm.
And she would be a different woman with different needs. And for the marriage to survive, I had to change with her. And he begins to rattle off the 5 women, and she is glowing and just shaking her head. Vice says, he says, so if you think you're married to the same woman for 60 years, you have another thing coming. That I was glad. I don't know who that guy was. Now remembering back, but that's the art of attunement. We are going to change. We are going to be different. I am nowhere. I mentioned it earlier. I am not the same man that started out this thing 14 years ago. Nor am I the same guy at 30 or the guy at 20, right? We've all changed. And the art of loving, the art of lasting, is that you are in communication and sending out bids so that you know where each other is. Your phone, when it's doing GPS, right? It sends out something, what is it, every 5 seconds? Something like that. It's checking in, all the times, or you get off track. Couples have to have these moments. And one thing, if you're out there, what you want to have at least 4 or 5 times a week for 20 minutes, 10 minutes, where each person shares, not about the relationship, but about their day and their feelings. And the other person listens to their feelings. Man, did I say fix it? No, I said feelings, feel with them. For 10 minutes, find out what their day is, what's going on, what's the worst part about that. If you're doing that, you will have the occasional question. Sometimes I've been just out for 15 years, but man, I really wanted to do this. I went to this workshop and I thought, wouldn't it be cool to be an energy worker? Instead of just HR, right? And then you say, well, tell me more about that, Jay. This is what but both of them have to have the right to be in that way, to have that intimacy. Because some part probably chose that lack of intimacy because at one point in time, it wasn't safe to be in a we, to be known. And so it's doing that, making it safe for that inner part of us to be a part of the we, and then to have the skill set, and then we can be our fullest versions with each other. We can share influence, and sharing influence is, if you're a man, it's not about losing your power. It's about empowering your beloved in a way that she can empower you back. Because empowered women that love you are the most wonderful creatures on the planet. They have your back. I had one couple I worked with where he had when we first started working, he had a missing right to create his own experience, right? And she had no right to belong. So, and the day came when he had been in a 26-year marriage, and not once, what does disempowerment look like? Not once had he ever initiated sexual relations. That's pretty disempowered for
me.
Yeah. I almost 26 years, and she was dying to be part of the we. And the day came when the ex-wife and kids said, well, we just want to do Christmas alone. And not having a right to create his own experience, not feeling very power, she says, well, I better make everybody happy. So, okay, we'll do this. And he tells this fiance, we'll just do Christmas the next day. What does this hit in her? Her missing right to belong. I get to be on the outside. So she just storms after him. And what's he get? An old feeling, I'm disempowered. I can't, okay. So they created a relationship. Both of them had this is what I call dueling rights, missing rights. So when we can give him back that feeling of empowered, he can create his own experience. He can tell the ex, hey, this is my beloved, and you can come over next year to my house and we'll celebrate together. When she feels included, she can empower him. What's that look like? He loses his job. She's a very powerful entrepreneur, and he loses a job in high tech. Within a month, her vast set of contacts had him a brand new job. That's what empowerment feels like. That's what a we looks like, right? So, that, and then it's just keeping those heart lines open. But it's got to be safe first. That's why I called the book Safe to Love Again. It's not always a choice. It's a choice that looks for what each person needs to feel safe. Safe is the bottom line.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, we all know we have certain patterns that aren't serving us, or we're missing certain areas like belonging or being cherished. But how do we know which one we've got or our partner's got?
Yeah. It's always interesting when the one is okay. So if you really want to know, just look at the recurrent patterns. I call it the Groundhog Day effect. Not that, the feelings that's been missing there all along in that relationship, the previous ones, all the way back to childhood. So if you're out there and you're wondering if it's that you've never truly felt welcomed in a relationship, usually that tracks back to a missing right to exist. That's kind of what now I got that one because my mom was so disappointed that I was not a girl, that she refused to name me for 3 weeks. And the state of Ohio had to send out some people with a nice little colored light on their, and they said to her on the porch, you have to name your son. And when she gave them some lip, I guess I heard this from my Aunt Evelyn, they said, ma'am, if you don't want to name him here, we can take you to a place where you'll have all the time in the world to name him. And Aunt Evelyn suggested naming him after your two favorite movie stars, Gary Cooper, Dean Martin. Now, so in that sort of unwelcome, distance becomes a pretty safe place. And I didn't realize how much I created distance. And then she never felt truly welcomed. I'm talking about my first marriage, right? And because distance became. So that's what sort of what unwelcome. Unworthy is, no matter, you had to give and give. Nobody gave to you. And so you thought, if I can just give and give and give and give and give and be the pleaser, they will maybe one day love me back and give me what I need. How many of us had that? It can happen through the best of things. Like, after the divorce, I had to grow up and I had to take care of my siblings. Give when a 9-year-old is supposed to be given to them, right? So if you've never felt worthy, or you've been always the resentful giver, that's the usual sign, right? Then you probably had a missing right to have your needs met. If there's some part of you that always loses itself in a relationship and then has a phobic response to being in a relationship, I don't want to go into that relationship, I'll lose myself, because you tend to get meshed. That's a split right to separate and belong. Or you're the Marlboro mate. It feels bad. I got to do it by myself, right? That means you never got cherished and protected. You never got to be a me and a we. It's a Goldilocks zone. It's both ands. If you had to be the Marlboro mate, if you have, or you're always the lost one, then you can never have real support. Then you probably had what's called a split right to separate. It got split. You never got to have both sides of the equation. Then if you're always creating experience on somebody else's map, they get to be the standard of it, then that's a missing right to create your experience. The feeling is disempowered, but it's more internal experience, right? It's like a couple that came in and they said, well, there's some missing intimacy and all that. And I said, so what? He says, well, the last time we made love was 8 years ago. And she leans over and taps him on the knee and says, yes, but honey, as you well know, a lot of people have sex and don't have near the love that we have. It's not the only thing. And he goes, yes, honey, yes, you're right. And I'm thinking, okay, we know exactly which right we're going after. I mean, that's no right, that's, it all had to be on her. And she had no right to love and be loved back, right? Which includes the sexual element as you on. So it made perfect sense, right? And if you can't speak up, you don't have a voice, or you find yourself always choosing what you don't want rather than what you want, give you back what's called an earned, secure lifestyle, right? So, and that's because that's the key, giving ourselves back the feelings so that we have the permission slip, the emotional permission slips to choose and create better in our lives.
Beautiful. I want to ask you a more, I guess, mundane question.
Go
So
ahead.
these days in relationships, very different than when our parents grew up. There was strong men and women roles. So there's that piece. Just how do people show love and also just do those everyday things also?
The everyday. So let me get your feeling. Is it about how do we do it in the dailiness of life?
Yes, how we do the dailiness of life. Because it used to be, you know, the women were at home and the men went out. But now both go out and both are in, and, you know, the
Yeah.
roles are changing.
Oh, aren't they though? And for the good, and for the good. You know, see, it used to be, I don't think that our grandfathers and grandmothers had very much of a right to create their own experience, to be quite frank. Right? And, only the best of them really create a real we. I think the trick is, that we are looking for a relationship that actualizes ourselves. But if there's too much self and not enough we, that will destroy the relationship. But both partners have to really be attentive to the dreams that each is there. What aspect of themselves are they there that they really need to be validated? That's the most important part. Okay? Is I think in the modern relationship, both people have dreams of not only they want to do, but who they want to be. And in most dysfunctional relationships, it's more times than not, they are disappointed at who they have to be or who they've become because of the relationship. And it feels like a death of self, not a rebirth, not a refurbishing. And I'm not saying we're there to be therapists for each other, but we have to truly, I think a soulmate relationship is, it used to be that a contract was, did I not screw up today? Did I do reasonably well? But what, if we want to call it a soulmate relationship, you can call it anything else. It's a soulmate relationship is based on a today, in all my little actions, did I bring out my partner's very best self? That's a different standard. Did I bring out their best self? And so it's paying attention to who, the identity that they are, to really understand who they are at their core, and to help them evolve, to not saying, well, you're not the woman I married. Sometimes that can, you're not the man I married. Sometimes I've seen where maybe two people chose such disparate paths that it couldn't work. But most of the times you can choose to grow each other. You can be different. It's not about being the same. So long as you're supporting each other, it's fantastic. Yeah. So I think the key thing is if I were to say it, I mean, they're all important, but there has to be a feeling of empowered in a modern relationship, especially for women. The research shows that 82% of the time that men don't share influence or really support the dreams. There's a technical term for them in the research. They're called divorcees. We have dreams. Most times when couples are fighting and they got this and they don't know why they're fighting, the stuff is coming out sideways and they go, why did we fight over the coffee grounds being left in? It's not the coffee grounds. It's the fact that there have been unexpressed dreams. that have not been expressed.
Mm-hmm.
Whenever there's a log jam in a relationship and it's kind of over stuff that when they look at it, go, and I have no idea why we got in that argument. It's because somewhere that argument is trying to point toward dream, missing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love that distinction because people don't think about that. They think it's the coffee grounds. they, they think it's something else, and it's not. It's just frustration, like underlying frustration.
Think of it, it's the part that wants to be free to have its dreams. If it can't be acknowledged or seen, it's like the kid that's just sort of, pulls at something. Oh, I don't know how that coffee brought, things like that. So empowerment, listening to dreams, and in COVID too, we have to really, because I know we talked about that earlier, we have to really be attention to, are we creating a bubble of safety for each other? Sometimes there's a difference between one person's safety and another's, and one is willing to take more risk, right?
Mm-hmm.
But what I know is that these feelings of safety or unsafety last a long time. And we have to make sure the other one is feeling safe. If we're always saying, oh, they're not going to limit my right, but that's not a loving thing.
Mm-hmm.
We have to err on the side of safety for a while. That's what cherished and protected means.
Mm-hmm.
And if a spouse asks you to wear a mask, we're not asking for a sacrifice of your firstborn son. We're not, we're just asking for a mask. And to say, honey, if that's what you need, that's what you get.
Mm-hmm.
Because that's what's important. That's that bubble of safety that a we gives.
Mm-hmm.
And then you let people in who honor the bubble of safety, like yourself. So it can be done. There's some limitations. I'll grant you that. Sometimes I go out to get olive oil 10 miles away. It feels like I've done a jailbreak.
Right now, yeah.
So this is what Sean Connery felt like when he got off the rock. Alcatraz, always wondered what that would be like. And Alcatraz is just across the bay, right? But who knew, right? But these are the things that in COVID, if you think about it, there was. I had a friend tell me that they were on a walk with a friend, and this woman had been married in the 50s and had always been that men are, and marriage is not. But she decided to marry this guy. Why not give it a shot? We'll see if this thing works. Right? And what she found out is when she was bouncing off walls during COVID, this man was like a rock. Honey, we got this. We got this. Mm-hmm. Right? And what she said, she goes, I used to wonder every day, should I be in this marriage? Did I choose something? Will we make it? She goes, now I can't imagine because a day without him, because this man's my rock. Mm-hmm. This man, we are a we. And she goes, and she got a lesson out of COVID. She found out once all the stuff was around her, who was going to be in the foxhole with her. Mm-hmm. And so what we know is, during Hurricane Katrina, two things happened as a result. Divorce rates soared because people, were faced with what is, but also marriages. People found out, man, I got the best deal available. This can be a way for couples that come to me. I've got a lot of couples that have been married 25, 35 years coming to me that now there's, without the distractions, being face to face, they can't avoid saying, this is what the deal is, right? But it's a chance to also, for them to remake it and to turn it into, to look at those, find a way to truly love, have their hearts met. So it's an opportunity for growth because the distractions are not there. It's the greatest incubator of personal growth ever, but it's limiting. And I'm not talking about the financial costs. I'm not saying at all that the deaths that are happening are worth this, but I'm saying that those are unnecessary and tragic losses. And but I am saying that there is an aspect that I'm watching people coming and says, you know, if I'm going to be trapped at home, let's do some personal work. Yeah. Whether that's taking an online course or reading a book or work or doing something you've never done or working with a coach, you know, these are the things I can work on it. And for those people, if they've created a bubble of safety, and they're in the foxhole with each other no matter what's going on economically, they will come out of COVID with something far more precious.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
So let me ask you personally, at this point in your life, what gives you the most happiness, joy, fulfillment?
I'll tell you what gives me the most happiness. I love helping this. I really do love helping the cause of love. You know, when lately I've had marriages, 31 years, 27 years. And when you know that you've not only quote unquote saved a marriage, it ain't about the marriage, but these people learn to truly love each other. When you finish that arc of sessions, it feels really good. It feels really wonderful. Or when a single person says, you know, wow, I came in and I will never choose another man or woman like that. And I know I can have the love. And they may be 30, 40, 50, or 60, even 70, right? Age, by the way, when people say I'm too old for love, it ain't never about the age. It's about whether they feel worthy or not. Mm-hmm. All worthy people are looking for love. Right? And so that's it, you know, and I love the twinkle in my beloved's eyes when I know she feels loved. Mm-hmm. But for me, I'm kind of meaning driven, you know. I love knowing that I'm making a difference in the world. Mm-hmm. Or talking to, and I get off after this podcast thinking, I don't know how many thousands I just talked to, but I may have made somebody's day, and that's a good day. That's a good day.
That certainly is. So yeah. I'm sure a lot of people would like to know about your book or your website or how to get a hold of you and how to, you know, take advantage of some of the programs you're doing. So can you kind of go over what programs you have in your book?
Yeah. You can find me at www.GarySalyer.com, GarySalyer.com. And the book is called Safe to Love Again, and How to Release the Pain of Past Relationships and Create the Love You Deserve. It's written in down-home emotional language, you know, and it's on Amazon. If you want to reach out to me, I have 2 free gifts. If you go down on, there's like these love inspirations, 2 to 4 minutes for singles and couples. It's right on the front page. You just give your email. If you're a single woman and you're wondering about how to avoid Mr. Emotionally Unavailable, if you put GarySalyer.com/available, like emotionally available, there's a free video series for single women on how to choose better. If you want to reach out for a question, just write me at Dr. Gary at GarySalyer.com, Dr. Gary at GarySalyer.com. And, you know, if you need to explore some of this in depth, we can figure something out. But those are kind of the 3 ways. Either write me, and then there's the 2 free gifts on this, and there's a bunch of videos on the site. There's like tons of videos.
All right. Well, thank you so much for being on the podcast today. And I've learned so much listening to that about the, you know, different rights, and it really makes sense. So thank you so much.
Well, thank you, Kimberly. And it's been an honor. And thank you. You know, we have, for just a short time, notice that there's a sense of belonging here. you and I have collaborated as a we for this hour to create more we-ness in the world, you know, and, and just everybody out there, notice that for this hour, the universe has supported you. Just notice for this hour, the universe had your back with two people you may or may not have known who are here because, we both have a commitment to spread meaning and love. So just notice for the moment, the universe really does have your back.
All right. Well, thank you. One last question before we get off.
Okay.
What's your best advice for the most incredible, amazing life?
Most incredible, amazing life. I really believe it is to not be second guessing all the stuff that goes wrong. That some part of your soul chooses adversity and all these things because it's here to learn a lesson, to not make yourself wrong. That's the biggest lesson, that some part of you did it, that you took the best deal. And the key is, what's the next best deal that I can take today? And if you take that, then what's the next best deal? If we can follow our soul that way, we will always find our way in life to what our ultimate purpose is, goals, things. Whether that ultimate purpose is a better bowling average or to write a book.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Dr. Gary. And we'll talk to you again soon.